Normally I would make a top 10, but that's not gonna cover it for this video. So I was thinking, maybe a top 10 and 5 honorable mentions. But that's not gonna cover it either. So it's gonna be a top 20. Hello everyone, I'm Jay Mare and welcome to my personal top 20 list of my favorite horror movies of all time. And today we are the final day of October, the final day of spooky season. So that means it's Halloween. So happy Halloween everyone. And to celebrate Halloween, I want to talk about my personal favorite horror movies. I am a horror fan, so I have seen a lot of horror movies so far and a lot of great horror movies. So this was not an easy list to make because there are so many good horror movies that I can talk about. And like I said, a top 20 would be it best because top 10, that was just not enough. I wanted to talk about more horror movies, so I'm gonna talk about my 20 favorite horror movies. And to not make this a very long list, I'm just gonna talk about numbers 20 to 11 a bit quicker than usual. And then once we got to my top 10, I'm gonna talk a bit more about these movies. So, we have 20 movies to talk about. Remember, these are my personal favorite movies. If you have other favorite movies, that's fine. I get it. There are a lot of great horror movies. So let's get to it. At number 20, we have Sinister. And I was really doubting between this one or Insidious. Both kind of similar movies. But I went for Sinister for the simple reason that Sinister is slightly more scarier for me. Really like this story, really like the use of these old home videos and make it something scary. Number 19 is February, or also known as The Blackcoat's Daughter. And people who know me, they know that I'm not really into demonic possession films, with the exception of this one. This one really works. I really like the two plots of this movie and how the plots are structured. Really good in eerie atmosphere creating. So it's a movie that definitely needs multiple watches to really get the movie. At 18 we have the British movie The Descent by Neil Marshall. And if people ask me, what is your favorite scary movie, or what is the movie that scares you the most? Well, the scariest movie I have seen is The Descent. It's not only scary because they are trapped in this unknown cave, but they also have to deal with these really terrifying creatures, and it's a very good scary horror movie. Number 17 is Saw, and I really love Saw, and really admire that they made this movie with a limited budget, with a limited time, and it became this phenomenon. It's a very little, simple, but very clever horror film. Number 16, we have my favorite vampire movie, and that's The Lost Boys. And I'm still angry on myself that I did not watch this movie sooner, because this movie is just a lot of fun. At number 15, we have my favorite zombie movie, and that's Dawn of the Dead, directed by Zack Snyder. And I really think this is a cool zombie movie. This movie is basically a cool sequence after another cool sequence. And I always was a fan of the running type of zombies. Number 14, maybe a surprise, but I have Sorority Row. Don't get me wrong, I really like a lot of slashers, but this is some kind of guilty pleasure for me. And 2009 was a really interesting year for me because I was introduced to all these slasher films, and this really stand out the most for me. At 13 we have Scream 4, my favorite of the Scream sequels. Really love this movie. This is one of the best slasher films I have seen, and this is mostly because of one character that makes this movie awesome. Number 12 we have a classic, and that's The Fly. And The Fly is a simple story, not that many characters, but it's all very executed to perfection. And it's about this man that is turning into in a fly, in a human fly, and great movie, very scary body transformation. And at number 11 is A Quiet Place. Just didn't make it to the top 10, and I love this movie. It's a very unique movie, and I saw it in theaters, and till this day this is one of the best cinema experiences I have ever had. Okay guys, now we're at my top 10. These are my 10 favorite horror movies of all time. And at number 10 we have another classic, and that is The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick from 1980. And The Shining used to be my favorite horror movie when I was in high school, but since then I've seen some other movies that I think are better, but still The Shining still worth the place in my top 10. And Stanley Kubrick just directed this movie very good. And what really works about The Shining, because it's about this family that has to stay for the winter in a hotel to keep an eye on the hotel, and the father is slowly, or rather quickly, turning mad. He is very crazy. And The Shining is really a horror experience, because the way Stanley Kubrick directed this, how he shot things, how he framed things. For instance, when the young kid is riding his bike through the halls of the hotel, there is something atmospheric about that. It is basically just a kid driving a bike. So The Shining, it really works. Very atmospheric horror and a true experience to watch. Number 9, we have a recent movie, well, it's more than 10 years old, and that's The Cabin in the Woods, directed by Drew Goddard. And this movie really starts as your typical horror movie of 5 friends going to the cabin in the woods to spend some time together, and then they get slaughtered one by one. It starts so, but at a certain point everything changes. It's like that the makers of this movie thought, let's do something basic and then just play with all the tropes and the conventions of the genre, and that is what we get. And it also works as a horror satire, but what really works for me is that third act. That was just bloody awesome. I still remember the first time I saw that third act. I was blown away by it. So it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time. At number 8 we have a horror movie I have seen at a very young age. Until this day I'm still obsessed with this franchise, and that is the original Final Destination. The third one I saw first. I think that's more the accessible one, the more fun one. But the original did everything better. It had an interesting plot, very interesting premise, actually nice characters, and everything in this movie was done perfectly. Like the whole premonition our main character gets was awesome to see, and then we see that death is still coming for them, it's lurking them, it's getting them. And this movie is actually a lesson in how to build up something and do a great payoff. It's really a tension built movie, and I love Final Destination. Number 7, we have another remake, and that is The Hills Have Eyes. Yes, I like Wes Craven, but the remake is a much better movie than what he did in the 70s. What Alexandre Aja did with this remake was just amazing. He made this a really brutal film. It's basically about a family that is going on a trip. They are riding through the desert until their tires are broken. So they are stranded in the desert where the hills have ice. And then at a certain point they get attacked by the people from the hills. And some brutal stuff, man. It's not always easy to watch. But what I really love about this movie is the third act. We have this character, Doc, who is portrayed as a dork basically. But at the end of the movie, when his kid, his baby, is abducted by these people of the hills, he wanted to get his baby back, and he started off as a really dorky character. He turns out as a really brave man, as a brave dad who wants to do everything for his kid, and that's what I really love about this movie. Number 6, we have Mimic by Guillermo del Toro. And now this is a movie that I not really see that often in other people's favorite horror list, and I think it's a really shame, because I really love this movie, and I'm talking about the director's cut. And I really love horror movies that are set in these kind of underground places. Like in this case a subway, but a cave I really love also as well. And I love creature features. Before I went to slashers in 2009, I was all about creature features. And this is one of the best creature features I have seen in my life. Guillermo del Toro really directed a very good movie. Just a shame, and that's the only problem I have with this movie, that he did not do his original ending like he envisioned it. What he envisioned for this movie to end, that would have been perfect. But other than that, I still love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies. I've seen this so many times now. It's an annual watch basically. At number 5, and now we are at the top 5, my 5 favorite horror movies. Number 5 is another movie that I've seen at a very young age, and I actually was scared by it, and that is Signs by M. Night Shyamalan, something like that. There's also some discussion about whether Signs is an alien movie. It's an alien movie, that's for sure, but whether it's a horror movie. Well, like I said, when I saw this as a kid, it really scared me. Especially that one scene that you all know, the Brazilian party scene. Watching that scene for the first time, I really jump scared. That was something really scary for me to see at that time. And maybe also explain why I'm so into alien movies, why I'm really fascinated by aliens. But Signs is also a very well crafted movie. M. Night really made a masterpiece in this movie. And there are some problems, well, some people have problems with the last 5 minutes of this film. I get it, but I think those last 5 minutes also makes a lot of sense. They are everything of those last 5 minutes they explained in the movie. So maybe give this movie another watch, pay more attention, and maybe be open to really get the last 5 minutes of the movie. And I really like that there are certain readings on how to watch this movie. I have seen theories about people saying that it's not about aliens but about demons, so it's very interesting, this movie, and definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I love Signs and I will defend this movie forever, I think. Number 4 is The Silence of the Lambs. Now this is also a movie that is some kind of discussion whether it's a horror movie. I get it, it's more of a thriller, but for a thriller it's actually very eerie, and we have 2 horror icons in this movie. Obviously we have Hannibal Lecter, played perfect by Anthony Hopkins, and also we have Buffalo Bill, a bit underrated but also a good horror villain if you ask me. And The Silence of the Lambs is maybe the best made horror film ever. It won an Oscar for Best Picture as only horror movie so far, and just brilliantly written, brilliantly acted, fantastic directed. It's just an amazing story, and that whole escape scene by Hannibal Lecter, that gave me chills, and it's still one of the best scenes ever. The Silence of the Lambs, fantastic movie. Number 3, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because I have 2 movies, because I think they are basically similar, though they are from other franchises, and that is Aliens from 1986, one of the best sequels ever made, and Predator from 1987, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Both movies came out almost in the same year. They are basically about the same thing, about a group of soldiers, mercenaries, that get stranded somewhere in a space or in a jungle on Earth, and they have to fight an alien. And both movies are awesome. And it's sometimes really difficult for me to pick one. And one day I would say, yeah, Aliens. But on the other day I would say, no, Predator is better. So I placed them together because they are both basically kinda the same, but both awesome. So those 2 are my number 3 spots. But yet they are not the best alien movie that exists, because at number 2 I have John Carpenter's The Thing. This is my favorite John Carpenter movie. I think this is his absolute masterpiece. And I'm still shocked that this movie flopped when it came out in 1982. People were more interested in a friendly alien with E.T. than in this kind of parasite alien in a snowy landscape. But luckily, in the 90s it got a VHS release and it became a cult classic. Till this day, people are still talking about this movie. It's a very praised horror movie. This is a movie that usually pops up in people's favorite horror list, and with any right, because the thing is amazing. Really, you have that claustrophobic landscape on Antarctica. You have this alien threat, and what is so interesting about this alien threat is that it can shapeshift in any human on that station. And Kurt Russell as McGrady is a fantastic character, and I really love the ending. It's a very open ending, and that makes it even scarier to have such an ending like this. So The Thing, one of the best movies ever made in general. But obviously, like you all know, my favorite horror movie is of course Scream by Wes Craven. The original Scream is fantastic. I really love Scream. I love the characters. Great opening scene with Drew Barrymore. That is one of my favorite scenes of all time. Great opening scene. The Ghostface reveal is all amazing. The whole third act is highly entertaining, and Wes Craven just directed a very good movie. Also perfectly written by Kevin Williamson, and they really saved the slasher genre in the 90s with Scream. And I'm pretty sure that Scream will probably always be my favorite horror movie. Well, never say never, can always be another horror movie that can top it, but I don't see it happening. This is my favorite. So guys, I did it. I talked about my 20 favorite horror movies of all time. I hope you like my list. Always be free to share your favorite horror movies below in the comments. Would love to read those. And if you want to see more videos of me in the future, be free to subscribe to my channel. So I still wish you all a happy Halloween. Watch some great horror movies this evening, and till the next time.